You might be wondering about the thick white substance found in Tynaton's body, a detail that's admittedly uncomfortable to discuss and something the family prefers to keep private. However, according to some journalists, police uncovered surveillance footage showing Tinaton engaging in intimate acts with homeless individuals on multiple occasions while in Turkey. Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're back with another gripping and chilling story from around the world. This time, it begins in the vibrant city of Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and takes a tragic turn, ending in a suburb of Istanbul, Turkey. The story revolves around a woman who had a deep passion for traveling the world. An avid photographer, she joined Cambodia's photography community and often set off on adventures to capture life through her lens. Despite being married and the mother of two, she chose her love for travel and photography over spending time with her family. So, what happened to her, and how did her journey lead to such a tragic end? Let's dive deeper into this story and uncover all the details. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. Oh, and share this story with your friends. It's one you won't want to keep to yourself. So, here's how it goes. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Tinaton, born in 1979 in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Tinaton was stunningly beautiful and incredibly smart, the pride and joy of her parents, Mrs. Maya and Mr. Giga. They were a deeply religious family, so much so that Tynaton's younger brother Zviad even went to pastor school before switching gears to pursue a master's degree in economics. Fast forward to 1997. Tynaton's brother introduced her to a guy named Vono, who was 6 years older than her. Word on the street was that Vono had a thing for Tinaton, but the feelings weren't exactly mutual. Vono didn't have a stable career. Sometimes he worked in construction, other times as a building glass cleaner, and even as a security guard at a massage parlor. Not exactly the dream package for someone like Tinaton. But Tynaton's parents thought differently. They saw Vono as a hard-working, kind-hearted man and decided to play matchmaker. In 1998, when Tinaton was 19 and Vono was 25, the two tied the knot. Marriage, however, didn't mean Tinaton was ready to settle down. She had big dreams of going to college and becoming a photographer. She hoped Vono would somehow earn enough to support her ambitions, but life had other plans. 3 years later, in 2001, Tinaton gave birth to their first son, Ranga. 2 years after that, their second son, Wellers, arrived. By this time, Vono had settled into a job as a school bus driver, but money was tight, and Tynaton's college dreams were slipping further away. Undeterred, she started teaching herself photography, eventually joining an online community of nature and travel photographers. Her passion paid off when a website began buying some of her photos. This marked the start of Tynaton's freelance photography career. But here's the twist. Vono wasn't exactly thrilled. It wasn't that he didn't support her love for photography. He just didn't like how it pulled her away from their family. Tinaton, however, didn't let that stop her. Whenever she earned money from her photos, instead of using it to help with family expenses, she spent it on plane tickets and hotels to chase unique photography opportunities around the globe. For Tinaton, the thrill of traveling and capturing stunning images was worth it. But for Vono, it was a source of tension. He believed she should focus on their kids, save for their education, and prioritize their family's needs. Tinaton, however, had a free spirit. She couldn't let go of her passion, even if it meant clashing with her husband. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, Tynaton's love for traveling and photography had gotten so out of hand that she seemed to forget about her family. She often left her kids with their grandmother, Maya. But for her husband, Vono, it was clear. His wife should be the one responsible for taking care of their two sons. Over time, people began to accept her behavior, but by November 2011, Vono started noticing things that made him suspicious. Tinaton had a habit of making long phone calls in the middle of the night, often hiding her phone, and she had become distant from her family. Vono couldn't shake the feeling that she was involved with another man. Though he never found proof, he couldn't ignore the signs. He even started posting his frustrations on Instagram, questioning her loyalty and sharing his fears about her having an affair. But Tinotun didn't seem to care. Instead, she was busy planning another big trip around the world. She even borrowed money from the bank to fund her plans. According to people who knew them, Tinotun lived a life of luxury. She had the latest iPhones and iPads, while Vono and their kids struggled. Her sons went to school with torn backpacks, and Vono barely got by. To outsiders, it didn't look like they were a family. Some even thought Vono was her driver, not her husband. Tinotun's parents didn't do much to stop her. They fully supported her adventures. In early December 2011, she booked another trip. This time, she planned to travel with her photographer friend, Irma, but Irma backed out due to financial problems. So Tinotun left alone, leaving behind Vono and their two sons, who were 11 and 9 years old at the time. Here's what we know from the police investigation about Tinotun's travels in 2012. I'll skip mentioning the year for simplicity. February 6th. Tinotun landed in Istanbul, Turkey. She spent 7 days there, doing photo shoots and meeting a man she'd connected with on Tinder. February 14th. She flew to Amsterdam, Netherlands. She only stayed 1 day to meet another man she'd been chatting with on Instagram for 4 months. February 15th. Tinotun headed to Munich, Germany, where she stayed for 3 days. She enjoyed the scenery, and apparently, the company of some attractive men. February 18th. She returned to Istanbul, Turkey, possibly to reconnect with the man she'd met earlier. February 19th. Tinotun called her mother in Cambodia, asking her to buy a return ticket for a flight on February 21st. She said she was out of money and needed her mother to help cover the cost. Not long after calling her mother, Tinotun was spotted on a mall's surveillance camera. She seemed calm, pacing back and forth, sipping a coffee. She had rented a small room in Istanbul, not far from the mall, and soon after, her mother texted her the flight booking code for her return to Cambodia. But strangely, that mall footage would be the last confirmed sighting of Tinotun alive. On February 21st, the day she was supposed to board her flight home, Tinotun never made it onto the plane. The airline confirmed that her name wasn't on the passenger list, and her seat remained empty. Her family back in Cambodia waited anxiously, repeatedly calling her phone, but it was turned off. A week passed with no word. Growing desperate, her husband Vono and her brother Zviad flew to Istanbul on February 27th to report her disappearance to the local police. The investigation revealed the room Tinotun had rented, but she wasn't there. Surprisingly, her backpack was still in the room. The landlord said she hadn't been back for about a week. Then, on February 30th, something strange happened. Tinotun's phone became active again. Vono and Zviad called repeatedly, but no one answered. This allowed the police to track the phone's location. On March 1st, the police made a grim discovery. Tinotun's body was found near an old wall by the Galata Bridge in Istanbul, a notoriously desolate area often frequented by homeless people. She had been killed by a blunt force to the head. A blanket was found near her body, and there were further disturbing details. A man's DNA was found on her body. The police investigation suggested that Tinotun had died about 4 days before her body was found. It was also concluded that she had been killed elsewhere and dumped near the wall. The news devastated her family, especially Vono, who had always warned her about traveling alone, fearing exactly this kind of danger. On March 4, 2012, Tinotun's body was flown back to Cambodia, where she was laid to rest. The case drew significant attention, even prompting Cambodian authorities to collaborate with Turkish police. Over the following months, investigators uncovered shocking details. Police arrested 40 men from 4 different countries who had communicated with Tinotun in the 2 months leading up to her death. This group was eventually narrowed down to 21 men who admitted to having been with Tinotun during her 2-week trip. According to their confessions, they had met Tinotun through dating apps and had encounters in hotels, rental homes, or even their own residences. It became clear that Tinotun's travels weren't just about photography and sightseeing. It seemed she had been seeking experiences with men in each country she visited. This revelation added another layer of mystery to her tragic story, leaving everyone wondering what truly drove her on these journeys. 14 days with 21 different men, This wasn't about mutual love. It was reckless passion. Among them, 5 men had connected with Tinotun 3 months earlier on Instagram. She had even spent her own money to visit them after making plans to meet. Tinotun's parents, however, completely rejected the findings. They insisted she was deeply religious and a loyal wife, making such behavior impossible. But her husband, Vono, didn't deny the accusations outright. Instead, he focused on urging the police to find and arrest whoever was responsible for his wife's death. The investigation initially zeroed in on a 33-year-old man named Archil. He had been in frequent contact with Tinotun in the week leading up to her death. It turned out they had known each other for a while through Instagram, and Archil admitted to sleeping with Tinotun during her visits to the Netherlands and Turkey. He was upfront about the fact that it wasn't love, just fleeting moments of satisfaction. However, when the police tested Archil's DNA and fingerprints, they found no match to the evidence on Tinotun's body or clothing at the time of her death. Archil was cleared as a suspect. The next lead came when the police tracked Tinotun's missing iPhone and iPad to a man named Tengiz, who was staying at a local inn. Tengiz was quickly arrested, but he requested a lawyer and claimed he had nothing to do with her death. He said he'd simply met Tinotun for coffee and ended up with her devices somehow. Though Tengiz's DNA and fingerprints were found on Tinotun's body, he explained that it was likely from casual physical contact. Adding to the doubt, the DNA evidence from the white fluid found on Tinotun's body didn't belong to him. With no solid proof, Tengiz was released. A week later, however, Tengiz was back in custody. This time, the police were more confident in their case. Although Tengiz lived in the Netherlands, he held Turkish citizenship, and further evidence started to pile up against him. A surveillance camera near the crime scene, though far from perfect, captured footage of Tengiz's rental car at the location on the night of the murder. Witnesses also came forward, claiming they saw him carrying a woman near the old wall. From Tinotun's phone records, investigators discovered she had messaged Tengiz that evening, asking him to pick her up for a date. The police believed that during their meeting, Tengiz killed her with a rock. Although the rock was never found, the circumstantial evidence was enough to bring Tengiz to trial. In the end, the authorities were convinced that Tengiz was responsible for Tinotun's tragic death, and justice was served. At one point, a surveillance camera at a hotel in Amsterdam captured Tengiz and Tinotun checking in together. The two were even seen at a hotel in Istanbul, where they claimed to be a married couple. While Tengiz never admitted to taking Tinotun's life, the judge and jury found him guilty of her murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for killing her, destroying evidence, and refusing to cooperate with investigators. To this day, Tengiz has not confessed, leaving his motives a mystery. He's filed multiple appeals over the years, but each one has been denied. For Tinotun's family, there's some solace in knowing that someone has been held accountable for her death. Vono, her husband, has also come to terms with the situation, letting go of his wife who was unfaithful to him, while continuing to care for their children. Now, about the unsettling discovery of the white fluid found on Tinotun's body. This part of the story is something her family has tried to keep private, but according to some journalists, police uncovered troubling evidence from street surveillance cameras in Turkey. Footage showed Tinotun engaging in intimate acts with homeless men on multiple occasions, sometimes in dark alleys. In one instance, she was recorded with a security guard from a shoe store. Just hours before her death, surveillance footage captured Tinotun having consensual relations with a homeless man. The man was arrested and included among the 21 suspects, but he was later released when it was confirmed that Tinotun was alive afterward and had later met Tengiz. As for Tinotun's ex-husband Vono, he has since remarried. He's now with a widow who has one child, and together they've built a happy life. Despite the tragic loss and the pain it caused, Vono and his children have found a way to move forward. What lessons can we learn from this story?